Hey, what's up? This is Doob solo for Doomed and Stone. And today I'm sitting here with Steve Scavuzzo, founder of Cloud's Taste Satanic, my personal favorite band, self-styled instrumental post-rock, post-doom, etc., etc. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much, Deb, for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. I like to think of you guys as boutique metal. And I don't know if anyone has ever said that before. You're like uh couture curators of your music and your products.
I like that. I like that. I fact because yeah, it's hard to describe. We started out as Doom, but then you get into there's elements of post rock, post metal, um, and a bunch of other things. So I started like adding all these like descriptive things to our bio. It started to get out of hand. And now I like the boutique one. I've got to find a letter that goes with it because it was like post-pagan, demonic doom, satanic stoner. What can we do with boutique? How about boutique bombastic? I'll give me some time. I'll work on it. But I like
Hey,
boutique. I think that I because it's probably an applicable description. Because yeah, we probably do appeal to a more select few, but yeah, we'd rather have a few less people and but those people be a little more passionate. And at the end of the day, I think it's a lot more important for us as musicians and even from the business side of it, to have people that interested and invested in the band is helpful.
so y'all have been producing music for or you have with Clouds Stay Satanic in with one lineup or another for over 10 years now. Is that right?
That is correct. We started in well, me and the band started in I guess 2013, and the first album came out in 2014, and it's been pretty much a release every year since then. So it's been fairly consistent, and yeah, trying to at least I'm a vinyl fan. The other guys in the band are vinyl fans as well too. So we try and mix it up pretty much with every release, just because that's something that we would want.
So let's roll it back a little bit. At what point did you realize you wanted to um, make your own music as opposed to just playing other people's music?
Well, I figured it out pretty early on. You get a guitar, and the first thing you want to do is play other people's songs that you love. And then you realize it takes a lot of work, and but I learned early on that I wasn't going to be able to reproduce on the guitar the songs that I was listening to, the music that I was listening to. So I kind of put it away, took some lessons and then put it away for a while, and then we kind of rediscovered it a little bit after college. Mostly, again, this is probably a common story, punk rock, and just getting into bands like Black Flag and Minor Threat, and realizing that you didn't have to necessarily be a virtuoso to play other people's music. But even then, at that point, it kind of like, I that kind of I got bored, I guess, playing even that kind of other people's music, and at some point it was like, okay, well, if I can play these simple chords, I can write, my own stuff as well too. So it wasn't a long journey to go from like, playing a few simple chords to basically, well, why don't I just write my own?
And so now that you are writing your own music, you're drawing on a well of inspiration that you've sucked up over your lifetime.
I mean, but to be honest with you, my interest is really, really broad. It'd be hard for you to name a rock band that I didn't have at least some affection for. I probably mentioned Black Sabbath because everyone bunches Black Sabbath
Yes.
um, as being as starting out. I definitely, I've gone through, and but the periods that I've kind of gone through. It's not like I threw them aside, but I had a heavy prog period, so I would have gotten into Yes and Genesis and Pink Floyd, of course, and then hardcore and bands like that, and but it's all basically rooted in rock music for the most part. I probably spend a lot more time listening to jazz now than anything else, but that's only because I've run out of rock bands to listen to for the most part, except for those that are kind of newer in the scene. Um, but yeah, I definitely hold on to those influences and look to them and look back at them, for inspiration towards the stuff that we're doing now. For example, the Yes reference when we did uh, uh, Tales of Demonic Possession was very much influenced by the Yes album Tales from Topographic Oceans. But it's not like we're like ripping out like, Yes guitar solos or, taking symphonic, elements from and adding it to our records. It's more of a feeling and an approach. And I could talk for hours on all those elements that come together, but that's kind of what you draw upon, less about guitar playing skills and trying to ape those musicians, and more about the overall package of everything, how the art is presented, the length of the songs and just to try and push boundaries. And I think that's what we did with that record and probably what we did with 779 AE and what we're working on now for a new record. And I could tell you the reference point and you'd be like, what the hell? I mean, are we gonna,
Well, I
are you
might not be, I might not be like, what the hell, but somebody else might.
Well, here you go. This is the thing that I've told my bandmates, but and that we've worked on. But this record is very much inspired by Led Zeppelin's "Houses of the Holy." And again, I could go in for to hours about what elements are and what elements are not. But it's not like you're going to necessarily get a whole slew of Jimmy Page guitar solos, and you're not necessarily going to get, well, you're not going to get Robert Plant vocals. But when you hold the record in your hand, you're like, okay, well, how did we get from point A to point B? I see you started with Houses of the Holy. How did you end up with this, which, you know, may not necessarily sound it, but there's so many elements that go into creating an album. It's years
Yeah.
of thought that at least it is for us. I mean, maybe bands get together and knock out a few songs and put it together, grab some art, and like they're done. But for us, it's at least a year to 2 years of 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 time from inception to when you actually hold that thing in your hands. And there's a lot of thought and concepts and ideas that go through it and they morph over time. But so that's the takeaway for that. The new record is going to be based on or influenced by Led Zeppelin's Houses of the Holy, and maybe you'll get the reference when it comes out. Maybe you'll be like, what the hell?
Steve, let me pick my jaw up off the floor for a second. Led Zeppelin was the band that changed my ear forever musically.
Oh wow. I can completely understand it. There's so much in their catalog to be in awe of.
So you are a band that creates music for vinyl formats, which means that you're going into it with a framework for your concept. And I would assume that rather than being restrictive, it allows you to be more creative because it's not necessarily like limiting you, but providing you with a set of guidelines that allow you a lot of different ways to put something together creatively. I'm curious, though, when you begin with an idea, how does that spark start?
I guess as we are now, it's having a concept, at least to start with, is really helpful. With 79 AE, we had the concept right off the bat, so that was even super simple. Normally, what's happened with Tales and the other albums before that, they start with an idea, and that idea will morph over time, but you start with the idea of where we see this going musically and also physically, with Evil Eye and Second Sight. We'd been inspired by a band called UFO Mammoth from Italy. I don't know if you've heard of that
Yeah.
band.
Hmm.
Um, and they had done like this, I think it's Oro or they had basically had two records. It was two separate albums that came out 6 months apart from one another. And it wasn't a double album. It was just like, okay, we're going to do the first one, and then 6 months later, we're going to release the second one, and it's going to be same concept. And I
Hmm.
thought that idea was brilliant. I was like, wow, okay, that's great. So, we kind of started from that element and idea, and things sprang from there. With the stuff we're working on now, yeah, it kind of like I think personally about what direction do I see the band going in, and what reference point can we use? And I think the whole dovetailing into the type of music that we wanted to create, and the Led Zeppelin reference before, they all kind of came together on a period of time. Part of it was the desire to maybe try some songs that were shorter. Um, we're now moving more in the band. We did it with 79 AE, but we're the band. There's a lot of writers in the band. Everyone's writing now, just to one
Good.
extent or another. So we're
Cool.
trying to like incorporate that element, how we're going to make that sound. Um, so all these kind of things come together at the same time, but also, yeah, you're right. The framework of vinyl is great, but also now, weirdly enough, has become a hindrance. In the past, when we were writing and coming up with records, writing 20-minute songs, I don't say it was daunting, but it was definitely ambitious for us. Now the band is at the point where everyone's writing too much.
Mm.
Or let's put it this way, no one, I'm the only one that's keeping an eye on the clock. And we start like coming up with these ideas and writing songs, and everyone's like, oh, well, you need to add more here and add in there. And I'm thinking these are great ideas, but I'm also watching, okay, we're now past 21 minutes on a side. This is going to become a problem. So
Mm.
so it's
Yeah.
now writing 20-minute songs. 20-minute songs are too constraining for this band. And I'm like, oh, so we got to work with, try and rein things in and do some editing to try and, because, vinyl's not going to get longer than 22 minutes. And even then, you're pushing the sound quality.
Hmm.
So it's funny how we've now got a band full of like, Beethovens who are like, oh, no, come on, let's compose and we shouldn't be constricted by time, man. And I'm like, I agree. But until compact discs really come back and make a statement, it's something that we kind of have to keep an eye on. I find it helpful because it provides motivation for editing and to try and make things, quality over quantity. But
Yeah.
it's hard to quell people's ambitions. People want, and I love that element of the people in this band that are just like, yeah, let's make it bigger, let's make it longer.
I recognize a lot of patterns and structure in your music. So can you talk a little bit about where that came from?
Yeah, so I mean, it's like anything, I guess, with progressing with writing, especially a period over time. You start with something fundamental, like punk rock and a couple of chords, and then again, if you have ambitions or you have influences, it progresses from there. And it got more complicated, the songwriting over time, but I think it took a more dramatic turn. Probably in the band right before Clouds, and I started listening to a lot more post rock, Godspeed You, Black Emperor, and I was always a fan of movie soundtracks and things like that. And so the idea of just basically, if it was going to be instrumental, kind of creating something that hit all these spots. The instrumental element with the metal element, with longer drawn out songs that moved and changed, and bands like Godspeed and bands like Earth and Sun. I guess they're a little more drony, but all those kind of elements came together with kind of the things that I was listening to, and so kind of moved in a natural progression to start creating longer songs and have them have some movement. And so I think with Clouds was where everything kind of came together, and part of it was a change in guitar tuning. um I guess everyone equates doom with drop drop tuning, basically lowering
Hmm.
your E string down. Um, to me, it was, I guess a lot of bands do it, create that more ominous sound, but to me, it was more revelatory because it really affected the way I played guitar and it affected the way I wrote, and I
Hmm.
was able to finally really have fun with the concept of guitar playing. My guitar playing is not advanced at all. It's very simplistic, but I really enjoy my playing because I've boiled it down to essentially, some key elements of just being able to play easily without struggling and create sounds that I really enjoy. So I combined that, I guess, with the elements of the songwriting that I wanted to do, and that was essentially the perfect storm for Clouds Taste Satanic. It was that idea of like, okay, now I found the way forward. I'm taking the things that I've influenced by the direction I wanted to go, but now I have the tools and the skill set to create what I'm thinking about. And so it kind of ended up with that first album, which is very rudimentary. Um, I like the record a lot. Um, but
Same.
it was like the beginning of a path,
Hmm.
and it was going to lead into to records like Litter and to where we are now.
You all are all taking part in songwriting now. When Brian comes in, does he have his riffs and his solos? Like, what does he bring in, and how does that fit in to the rhythm section?
Um, if it's a song that I've kind of come up with a riff in or that he did not write, um, he kind of will he'll learn the rhythm, for the recording, but he'll also be thinking about five or six other parts. It's kind of grown over time.
Hmm.
And the amount of effort and time that Brian puts into the end result recording is probably far and away more than anyone else in the band. So a lot of the layering that you're hearing on our records, especially now, is mostly Brian. Um, in the sense that he's thinking about a lot of different ideas, traditional lead ideas, texture ideas. He's thinking the most gearhead in the band. He's the guy with all the effects pedals. He's the guy
Mhm.
that builds the guitars. He's the guy with all the guitars. Um, so he's kind of taking all these elements of his interest and thinking about that when it comes time to recording. And it's now gotten to the point where he'll play some parts during practice, but there's a lot of noise going on. You're not really hearing it. So oftentimes, the first time we're hearing Brian's recording idea is when we're doing the recording, or even to the point that sometimes we're not even there when he's laying down ideas. It depends on whether we got other stuff going on or not. But we
There's so
trust
much trust
Brian now
there.
to the point
Yeah,
that we're so thrilled with what he does and what he brings to the band that it's almost like, okay, whatever, we're good, just going to assume it's going to be brilliant, and we have to stick around and certainly give advice. I mean, we'll throw in ideas for sure as the song's being created, and everyone in the band has their prejudices. Greg and Rob are more into like the Radiohead texture things, whereas I'm probably more of the classic rock fan. So we're probably giving our influences to Brian. Brian probably straddles both both areas, but he's again always thinking about it. He's always thinking about textures, thinking about acoustic guitars. I'm thinking keyboards and things like that in addition to the riff elements. So, and that's grown over time, and that's about playing together as a band and being confident about everyone's contribution. Same with Rob, and the same with Greg and Greg's drumming. Everyone throws in their ideas about what other people should be doing to a point, but we're now at the point where the end the drummer is going to make final drummer decisions, and the guitar player is going to make final guitar player decisions. They'll hear what we have to say and incorporate ideas and keep open minds, but they'll kind of like, the buck stops there, I guess, so to speak. And it's good, you know.
when
Yeah.
you guys get together, other than having too many ideas, what's the energy like in your practice space?
We're very time efficient. I've joked there's a quote from King Gizzard. I think they were asked about whether they jam and practice, and they said, no, we don't jam, we work.
Mm,
I was like, oh, well, with a band with that much output, I that makes perfect sense to me. There's no
mhm,
time for just hanging out and playing. And I think we're very much the kind of the same way. We don't get together a lot, but we get together regularly. And when we get together, we focus on whatever the task is at hand, whether it's working on new material or practicing sets for shows. Um, so we're very efficient, and it's all we all get along really well. We've known each other for years now, and we're all comfortable with each other. Our egos are minimal when it comes to that. Everyone's really open-minded about other people's ideas. But we do have good discourse about when, someone agrees with something or someone doesn't agree with something. Everyone's
mhm.
got an opinion to some extent, but I feel like we work well together to land on things. Um, it's a space that we rent, with a bunch of other bands. So getting outside of oh man, look at all the extra equipment that's lying around. Who brought this crap in here? Uh, Aside from that, in the aesthetic of the place, and getting on the subway or getting to the space, it's good.
Cloud's Taste Satanic has, I guess we could either call it a juxtaposition or a balance of humor and camp and brightness and fun. with seriousness, um, classical doom themes, Satan. Is that deliberate?
Well, in a perfect world, I would have, said, we should never even go down the road of humor. Right? Not, I mean, as far as like, doing covers records, doing Christmas songs, things like that. Having a sense of humor, at least a little bit with social media. Because a lot of the bands that I admire seem to have no humor whatsoever. Um, they probably do, doesn't come across necessarily in their music and or in their posts. There's bands to me like and they all tend to come from Chicago. I'm not sure why. I haven't spent a lot of time in Chicago, but there's bands like Rezn and Russian Circles and Bong Ripper. I love these bands. I think they're great. But I followed them for years, but I don't really detect any real sense of humor, and that doesn't bother me. I'm fine. I'm all in on the serious. It's about the music, it's about the artwork, and I'm fine with that. And there are times when I'm thinking, why can't we be as serious and down to earth all the time as these bands seem to be able to? I'm sure they're really nice people. And I'm sure they have great senses of humor, but it doesn't necessarily come across in their art. And that's
Mhm.
fine. And I'm like, why can't we be more like that? The problem is that, we're funny people, and and we can't seem to, like, break away completely. The whole covers record.
Yeah.
Serious bands don't do covers records. Serious
Yeah.
bands do Christmas songs. Serious bands don't do jokey stuff when it comes to social media. But it's really hard for us to not have a little bit of a sense of humor. It just comes out. I try to quell it. I try to stomp
Don't
it down, but it
don't
doesn't
do
happen.
it.
Like,
Please don't
try.
stop with
I've
the humor.
tried. I'm
It's
trying
so
to be
good.
serious.
No, no. I think you're striking a perfect balance because you're amazing at what you do, but you also know how to have fun, and that makes it relatable.
When you put Satan in your band name, I mean, either you're gonna go all in or you're gonna have to say, okay, that's fine. We love the name. I really still love the band name, but we're not worshiping Satan. And if you thought we were,
You're gonna be
you're
disappointed.
confused, So
Yeah, yeah.
you can't either you embrace it or you just like acknowledge
So
it's fun.
sorry,
No, go ahead.
for a quick peek behind the curtain, would you like to disclose for folks who are not familiar, what the pun is in your band name?
There's a band called the Flaming Lips, which probably most people have heard of. And the band Flaming Lips have a album called Clouds Taste Metallic. Um, and I love that record. I love the Flaming Lips. I love that record in particular. But when I was trying to think of a band name for Clouds, well, for what became Clouds, I always kind of came back to that record, that title, because coming up with a band name is really hard. And I say it's really hard because it's something that's you gotta like in the beginning, and you've gotta like say, okay, am I gonna like this a week from now? Am I gonna like this a year from now? Am I gonna like this name 10 years from now?
Mhm.
And that's it, because if you got any interest in rock history or music history, names can stick around a long time. And you might come up with a funny idea and think, well, this is brilliant. And then a week later, you're like, oh, what the hell was I thinking?
Yeah.
So I always was intrigued by the Clouds Taste Metallic record title. As over the years of having the record, whenever I would go back and listen to it, I again look at the title and I go, I still don't understand what this means. Is it literal? Is it just a pun? But it always engaged my interest, and
Mhm.
I never got tired of looking at it or saying at it. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to use it as a reference point. And obviously I didn't want to keep it the same because I didn't want people to think we were a Flaming Lips cover band.
Right.
Um, but I was like, okay, how can we change this up a little bit to keep the long-term interest in the idea, yet be more applicable to the kind of music that we're doing? And that's where, I was like, oh, Satan's always cool. I'm never going to get tired of Satan. So we'll throw Satanic there. And so I've never regretted it. I mean, and most people are like fine with it. Occasionally you'll get a person who's like, what a ridiculous fucking name. And yeah, and all I can do is like, smile and say, yeah, it probably is.
Throughout my learning process of doing these interviews and talking with musicians, oftentimes I'll listen to the music and I'll think, oh, I recognize that, that tone and that riff. And sometimes I'll ask, are you a fan of this band, that band, or, is this intentionally sounding like this other musician? Kind of fun. It's like a little treasure hunt. So, for example, I can't remember which song it is, but I think it's on Tales of Demonic Possession. But Brian does this thing, like he's got this really nice, warm, classic guitar tone. He does this thing like doo diddly, doo diddly, doo diddly. I was like, oh, that's that's from Sticky Fingers. But but it's not necessarily that he's trying to play something from the Stones. It's
Well, if you're gonna get Easter eggs, it's probably gonna come from Brian. And yeah, it's he definitely has enough of a background that he can pull stuff off like that. I think with now to the point that we'll kind of joke at it. It's like with Tails, he was doing a lot. The biggest influence is probably Brian May from Queen. So you'll probably get if you parts that are like, man, this sounds just like Brian May. When we're doing the covers record, that's when he would kind of throw in more ideas of like, okay, we can have more fun with this. And I
Mhm.
know, and I don't think anyone's ever noticed, but we do a Black Sabbath cover um, on the covers record, and
Mhm.
Brian's solo is note for note Led Zeppelin. Yeah, so you got to go back and listen to there's a and I don't think anyone has ever caught it or certainly hasn't mentioned it, but he does, and I think it's literally a Led Zeppelin solo put on top of this Black Sabbath song, and it's brilliant. And I'll by here and I go, oh, that's a Zeppelin solo.
Now I have
And
homework. Thanks for the
oh my
homework,
God, that
Steve.
that one, and I know the other one too is he added, and this wasn't for the covers record, but he had to do a lead on one of the records that we're doing, and he was like, and I think he even asked me, do you know what this solo sounds like? And I go, well, it sounds familiar. And I think he got the tone or the idea from a Pretender song. It might have been Mystery Achievement. I can't remember exactly what the song was, but it was just like, okay, this is really going to work there. And he's done it in a bunch of things. There's a in the Nirvana cover. There's We Do Blue is the song, but he puts the
Yeah.
solo from Smells Like Teen Spirit
Yeah.
in to the point that when we sent the song the songs off to the record plant, to be pressed, we actually got a note back asking if we had a license for we had licenses for all the songs, but
Yeah.
he goes, well, do you have a license for I know you have a license for Blue, but do you have a license for Smells Like Teen Spirit? And um and I go, no. Well, he goes, well, the solo is in the middle of the song.
Oh
You're gonna
man.
have to get a license for that. I was like, no. It
So
was
you
like,
paid for two licenses for
for that
that one
one
song.
song we had to pay
Oh,
for.
wow.
It was worth it. It
Worth
was
it.
it wasn't a lot of money. It was worth it in the long run. But it was funny that the plant caught it. It was just like, nah, you need another license for that. So I was like, okay.
Since we're talking about covers, would you like to talk about your upcoming EP?
It is going to be the vinyl version of All I Want for Christmas Is Your Soul, which is basically four songs that we did last year around Christmas time, four covers. And I think people had asked, why isn't it on vinyl? And I think we were at the time we were kind of like gauging people's interest. I mean, it
Yeah.
was fun for us to do. We enjoyed the process, but I think we weren't quite sure how people were going to take to it. And people, for the most part, really enjoyed it. And it was well received. And I think people were like, oh, well, why don't you put it on vinyl? And, you don't have to ask me twice, about putting
Yeah.
songs on vinyl. So I was like, this is awesome. And as you know, it's Christmases every year. So it's like,
Yes.
fine. We'll do it for next year. And so we have the vinyl in hand. It's gonna basically start going out on November. We're gonna put it up for sale on November 1st on Bandcamp, and I think we'll probably let people know a couple of days beforehand via social media that it's going on sale. And the same songs. It's All I Want for Christmas Is You, made famous by Mariah Carey. You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, a Spinal Tap song, Christmas with the Devil, and
Mm.
Little Drummer Boy. And it runs about 20 minutes, a little less, I think, in total.
Too
And
short, in my opinion.
I did go back to everyone and go, well, we can just do an EP, or we can, record a few more songs and make it into a full length. And I got enough groans that like, okay. We'll put that on the back burner for now. And it's a 10-inch, which is the weird part is this is a 10-inch release, not a 7 or a 12.
Oh, cool.
So it is going to be a little more novel. I think it looks really good. We have it in hand now. I think the artwork turned out really well, and I think the music and the vinyl looks really good and sounds really good. So it's a little more niche as far as vinyl collecting, but we had done like the 7-inch single series a
Yeah.
few years back. That was fairly well received as well too, so I think people are okay with it.
We've talked about Led Zeppelin a few times today, so this is pretty appropriate. I had an aside while I was talking with another musician the other day, and we talked about how Led Zeppelin had the luxury of sequestering themselves away at Braun War and Headley Grange to write a lot of music, which ended up on records they released shortly after that time. And they used a lot of that material later, working in studio. They used some of that material as well. There's a vision I'm sure you have of clouds for clouds Taste Satanic that exists in the real world. But let's say you had access to, being able to go away to the countryside or not having to do your day job for a certain amount of time. What would that look like?
I think there'd be I think there would be an element of traveling to some studios. We have there's enough of interest in the band of music history to find places like Abbey Road and other famous studios to be, to hold a certain allure, and if money wasn't an issue and we're working at the band full time and we had the luxury of traveling, I think there'd be a lot of enthusiasm for doing more destination recordings. As it is now, what we've as a workaround for that, since we don't have necessarily the same financial or time wherewithal as Led Zeppelin, is to when we go on tour, when we on our trips to Europe, we've made it a point to stop in pick a one local recording studio and
Yeah.
essentially record our set. Um, so what we end up with is some of that experience of going to different places and recording in different studios, but also having material that we're going to use for essentially a live records, um, recorded in the studio, but recorded live, with no overdubs and just recorded and probably mixed at that place. So that's our version of, I think, of that concept where and we've done it twice now. We did it in Germany 2 years ago, and last year in Birmingham in the UK. And I think we're gonna see the UK live record next year at some point.
Wow.
But it's kind of like it satisfied that need of recording in different places, of kind of getting the travel experience, but doing it in a way that's affordable to us and
Right.
and and makes more sense.
Yeah, you're not just blowing it all on booze and drugs and expensive hotel rooms. You're putting your resources to good
We're
use.
trying. It's not like we're not
Yeah.
out there trying. It's a different world.
Yeah.
Those documentaries on those bands are very misleading.
Well, okay, I wasn't there. I don't know. I just
Or
listened to the
or
music.
completely accurate, and we just live in a different time. I'm not one or the other.
Some of those stories are of mythical proportion. We can just put it that way.
Right, right. We don't have enough time to be mythical. We got work to do.
Well, one other thing that I did think about, I would love to see you guys come out west to play live. What are the chances you're ever gonna come out here?
You know what it is? I guess we're at the point where it's sort of like it's not that we can't do it. It's not that we couldn't get on the phone or get on the computer and email people to set up shows. I mean, we've been offered shows on the West Coast. If you're ever coming out, play here. And we're really appreciative of that. I guess what we've been doing, and this goes with going to Europe or anywhere else, is trying to frame shows around a festival of some
Hmm.
point. Because if we're going out west, we're flying out, and it would be helpful to have a destination show to
Yes.
do. We did that when we played in Texas a few years ago. We would do it again with playing out west for sure in a heartbeat. I'd love to go, and everyone in the band wants to play out west. It's not a question of that. If we're traveling, if we're getting on a plane to go and we're putting together a tour, it's a lot more complicated. Or maybe we'll
Yeah.
just hit up some bands and like maybe try and jump on someone else's tour. I mean, we're on Majestic Mountain, which is
Yeah.
based in Sweden. So if we wanted to do a tour or kind of try and tour, get on a tour with some of the Majestic bands, would probably be a lot easier than you know doing one with a Blues Funeral or a Magnetic Eye band or whatever. It's not that we wouldn't want to, we'd love to, but again,
Hmm.
it's making those things happen, and they've got those labels have their own bands,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
a little more complicated.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts involved.
For sure. For sure. Thanks for the reality check there.
We're coming to
Oh,
your town.
well, people should look forward to your Christmas album, All I Want for Christmas Is Your Soul, coming out on 10-inch EP November 1st, and they should look for that on Bandcamp, right?
Bandcamp, and we'll let people know on social media when it's available.
Perfect. And then you also have a new record coming out in 2025 in the works.
Yeah, we'll definitely be recording a new record in the spring. When it comes out, we'll see what happens with that. We'd like
Ah,
to see we'd like to see one of our older records reissued in 2025. We're going to work on that, and we're going to work on that live record for 2025 as well. So there should be there should be vinyl options. It should be music options. Plenty plenty of music options in 2025 for Klaus Taste Satanic.
excellent. Well, Steve, it has been an absolute pleasure to meet and talk with you today. I hope it's not the last time.
Thank you very much. All I can say is if this goes up on YouTube, choose your thumbnail. I've had thumbnails with just my face on, and it's very flattering at first, but every time I sign on to YouTube and I see if there are any videos there, I see myself looking back at myself, and I'm like, there's that picture of me again. It's a two-parter.
Oh, shit.
The thumbnail doesn't have to be my face. Let's put that. I guess that's my point. You
Thank
can
you
do
for
anything
letting
you
me
want as
know.
a thumbnail.
Okay, thank you for letting me know your preference. I will honor that absolutely
I
because I
appreciate it.
believe in pushing myself to achieve the same level of excellence that you show me. So I'll pick a good thumbnail and
So,
edit it creatively.
something with skulls or topless women would be greatly appreciated.
I tend to steer away from the topless women. I like to pick other subject matter.
And
So likely won't see any of that, but I'll find something good.
yeah, I'm not sure where that why when that became like a signpost for Doom. I assume it's some sort of Satan worshiping thing that but and even in practical matter, it's like, you do that, you run the danger, of course, of like being shut down by every social media thing. So there's really no benefit whatsoever to it. But skulls everyone seems to like, including Instagram, so feel free.
Got it. Thanks. Next time we meet up, we should talk about mythology and symbolism in the doom metal culture because there is a lot of fascinating stuff there.
I'd love to discuss that and would love to incorporate some of that in the new record. So let's talk soon about that.
Yeah, let's schedule a meeting.
There you go.
All right, Steve, thanks again.
Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate
Take
it.
care. Got
Bye.
it.